second day at Carnarvon Gorge, and Mal and I decided we would attempt the long walk up to Big Bend and back, which is roughly around 21 kilometres. All the major points of interest lie along this one main gorge track, and the first major point of interest being the Moss Garden is around a 7 kilometre return walk. And if you go all the way to Big Bend, it's roughly 19.5 kilometres. Add in all the little side trips and you're well over 20 k's. And this is the big problem with Carnarvon Gorge, especially from a photographer's perspective. So for someone who's a rather unfit and a little bit overweight like myself, it's quite a challenging walk. Given that you have to walk so far to get to all the different locations, and unless you are really fit and able to walk really quickly, you can't spend a lot of time in any one spot. So to be able to photograph each feature in good light, you would need to really come back multiple days and almost treat each individual section as a separate walk. Admittedly, we did leave a little bit later than we should have. I think we got on the track about 8:45, and we decided to skip Moss Garden and Ward's Canyon. But we spent a good 20 minutes or so at the Amphitheatre, just catching our breath and enjoying such a magnificent spot. The Amphitheatre is definitely worth spending some time. It's a rather unique little oasis inside the gorge walls, and it offers a rather cool respite from the heat outside. My one and only previous trip to Carnarvon Gorge was 15 years prior, and I was in a lot better shape than I was this time around. And that time around I also skipped some of the features in the first half of the track. Our rather ambitious plan was to do the full day walk, but then come back the next day and do the Moss Garden and Ward's Canyon. As it turned out, we were in that much pain the following day that we decided not to go anywhere apart from sticking around Takaraka. The walk is not a particularly challenging one, it's just that it's very long. There's not too many steep sections and the track just meanders along quite nicely. There are a lot of creek crossings, so you do need to be careful when you're stepping across the rocks. It's quite easy to lose your balance and end up having a cool bath, which may not be a bad thing. One of my favourite little spots, I don't even think has a name, I couldn't find what it's referred to. It's located just before Cathedral Cave, and it's a large rock overhang with some gorgeous orange tones through it, and a beautiful pool below it. The way the light hits the water and reflects on the overhang above is just really stunning. Throw a rock into the water and you'll see a rather mesmerising reflection of the water ripples. I'd highly recommend taking this little side trip and just spending a little bit of time relaxing here and enjoying the ripples reflected on the rock above. We finally made it to Big Bend around 2 p.m. roughly, and we spent about half an hour there. After having some lunch, we took some photos and then made the decision that we'd better hightail it back, otherwise it would be dark by the time we reached the car park. Having gone into Boowinda Gorge on my previous visit, I knew that it's a rather spectacular spot and I wanted to photograph it again. You could spend half a day in Boowinda Gorge on its own, just meandering through, as it seems to go on forever. Unfortunately, I only got to spend about 20 minutes here, as we really needed to press on to make the return trip. A quick stop at Cathedral Cave, and then it was time to press on. The grandeur of the gorge can be rather overwhelming, and it's sometimes challenging just to stop and find those smaller details that make interesting photographs in their own right. When you do stumble across beautiful little sections near the creek, like this section which had hundreds of butterflies flying around, it's a great excuse just to stop and catch your breath. There's lots of bird life in the gorge, and in this particular spot it must be a favourite area for the currawongs, as they were on song all day. The last section of track, which also happens to be the first section, is probably the most challenging. After already having walked around 18 to 19 kilometres, the steps in the last section are the last thing you want to face. So in hindsight, after completing that walk, I probably took too much camera gear and not enough water. In the end, I was rationing my water and I ran out probably about 2 kilometres from the end. If I was to ever attempt this again, I'd probably just go with one camera and one lens and around 3 litres of water. But eventually we did make it back to the car, and despite being extremely exhausted and thirsty, we were also pretty proud of our effort.